Ah, here we are. How you doing, Vish?
I'm doing.
You're doing.
I'm
That's
doing.
good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, wow. It feels like it's been forever since since we've streamed. It's only been 2 weeks, but it does feel like it's been forever.
Well,
Hi everyone. I've missed you. I hope everyone's doing well. It's Wednesday, April the 23rd. It's about 5 o'clock in the afternoon on this out here on the Pacific Coast, and it's a lovely day. So
it's
I
your
was
it's your
very.
day of birth.
It is my day of birth. Yes. Today is my 52nd birthday, so I'm doing what I want today, and what I wanted to do today was to have a live stream and hang out with people in the community. So that's fun. And it's good to see a bunch of you here. Maya is here with a very important message.
Yes. I think
Jackie was
pretty much
crying
anybody
for some reason.
will send cash.
Just said happy. Thank you, Jackie, for the birthday wishes. Thank you, John Gooderham. Holly Unbiblical Hawk is here. Good to see you, and thank you for the birthday wishes. Yes, John Gooderham, sorry. There is a possible Kipp and Josh origin story. There's a video out there somewhere of the first time Josh and I met and became besties. If I ever, it's the thing is, these things are hard to find when they get old. It was on a live stream on Myth Vision podcast like 3 years ago with a bunch of people. I don't even know what the video was called. It was, yeah. So I'll keep my eyes open. But look, there's a happy birthday from my wife. Isn't that nice? Thanks.
Yeah.
So Pat Lowinger is here. Good to see you, Pat. Haven't seen you in a while. So Andrew is here. Thank you, Nicole, for the birthday wishes. Adia Morgenstern.
Keep trying to put Cheryl up there.
Oh, hi, Cheryl.
Yeah.
How are you? So good to see Cheryl Lyle.
Conspiracy.
YouTube and Kipp were born on the same. Is that true? Wow.
Yeah, it's their 20-year anniversary.
No,
which makes everyone in this chat old.
I am also only 20 years old.
At least.
Not really. So at least 20. That's true. So yeah. So thanks for coming and hanging out, everyone. So today I'm doing something totally different. I did a birthday stream last year. I don't know if you noticed that one, Vish. It was before you were joining me on a regular basis back when I was
I
still
watched
trying
it.
to.
I'm pretty sure.
Did you? You probably did.
Sure.
And for my birthday stream last year, I reviewed Jeremiah J. Johnston's Ph.D. dissertation, slow self-plagiarism disaster. So that was fun, right? But I was thank you very much, Triceratops, for the birthday wishes.
You didn't spell Hatikva correctly.
You certainly did not.
I can say, Ahav Tika, I love you.
That's never going to get old.
It's never going to get old. This is certainly.
Yeah.
This is very true. This is very true. Flavius Josephus, the first century Jewish historian. So very true. I've had a couple. Yeah. So I was chatting with Maya Adkisson a couple weeks ago or last week. I don't know. And she asked if I had ever talked about my PhD dissertation on YouTube. And I was like, No, why would I do that? And
Why wouldn't you
she
do that?
thought, what's that?
Why wouldn't you do that?
Honestly, it's because here's the problem. It's not something I've thought about in a very long time. So in fact, when I grabbed it off the shelf, for today, I cracked open the spine, it went like it made crackly sounds because
Nice.
I haven't even opened the damn book since easily before COVID. Easily. Oh, Triceratops has been coveting learning about my dissertation for ages. So today is the day, everyone. Today we're going to talk about
Hayom Hazeh.
because she's a Hayom Hazeh, correct. Because she's a dork. Oh, yes, of course. My wife has pointed out that yes, I did spill something on it. This is not.
Yeah.
This happens.
By the
On this
way,
one,
can you do a
there's a big crack in
Oh,
the
neat.
spine on that one.
Gotta
But
humidity control that storage there, Chief. By the way, do a fit check for everybody.
do a fit check. What that is that?
Yeah.
Why are we doing fit checks?
Because look at what you're wearing. Look at your shirt.
Oh, that
Show
one.
off.
Yes, let's do it.
Stand up, give us a
For the love of the
twirl.
Bible, yeah. Oh, really? You're gonna make me stand up and do this? Okay,
Well,
fine.
we can't see the whole thing.
Can't see.
Okay, there you
the
go. See,
There you go. These are available.
it's available. It's available in his merch store.
Right. Hair's in the way, isn't it?
Yep.
There you go. Okay.
There you go.
So this is the church version. You can wear this shirt to church.
Well,
there are other ones that you can wear to the bar. I encourage everyone to get them all. Because we should all, every now and then you're going to go to church and you're going to be in the bar. Yeah, Ligma FPV. There you go. So, we're talking about
I was gonna say one of the best billboards that I ever saw, like the marquee outside a local church, was get the hell out of church.
That's great. I like that.
It was a little edgy for the early aughts, I think.
A little bit. So yeah, but works for me though. In preparation for the stream today, so I thought I'd just maybe I will pull this up. Where did I put it? Oh dear. Oh no, it's down here at the bottom. So here we go. All right. So just going to pull up the thumbnail here.
Okay. While you do that, Andrew is asking, or at least commenting, that dissertation looks quite large. Is that a standard size for dissertations? Meaning the length?
Yeah, I will. I'll talk a little bit about that. So, there is the background is the University of Manchester, where I earned my PhD in 2009. That's the only photograph that I could find from the era. I'm pretty sure it was snapped. My in-laws used to have a sailboat. We used to go out sailing with them quite often. It was fun. But yes, and in the bottom right there is the title page for my PhD dissertation, Representation and Emerging Authority of the Jeremiah Traditions in Second Temple Judaism. And then the published version, the K4 Apocryphon of Jeremiah and the Qumran Jeremianic Traditions, Prophetic Persona and the Construction of Community Identity, which was published in 2014, I think. What year was that published? By Brill, so you can't afford it. But listen, stop anyone from getting it. You can find it for free online. there are places you can go. Yes, 2014. It's STDJ.
Legal places?
Not especially legal.
Of
There,
course they're legal.
there are places you can go to find it and to download it. And please, nobody buy it, because I think it costs like $300. It's idiotic.
Woo!
So don't do that. Okay. But yes, while I attended the University of Manchester, down the road here, kind of towards the bottom left hand part of the photograph, there was a lovely place to go and sit and have soup in the afternoon and tea called the Refectory. I think it was called the Refectory. But I used to go hang out there and read and write quite often when I was there. It was one of my favorite places on campus. So yes, that I went to the University of Manchester and came away with a PhD. Now, in preparation for today, in celebration of today, I went looking. I went to 3 liquor stores in town today, looking for a case of McEwen's Scotch Ale, which is one I used to drink when I was in Manchester, as people in Manchester do. Yeah, I mean, Boddington is the local craft, but the locals in Manchester all in me. The McEwen's Scotch Ale was the brew of choice among Manchesterians. So so it's really good. But they stopped carrying it at my local liquor store a number of years back, and
Aw.
no, they just don't carry it in Chilliwack, apparently. So
That's not cool.
I bought a 4-pack of Kilkenny. So I will be enjoying this for my birthday. I encourage everyone to join in. Grab a beer, grab a glass of something stronger if you so desire, and let's have a drink together.
Or I'll just get altered in a different way.
There you go.
Yeah.
So Pete himself says probably got a tariff on it.
Yeah.
I forgot how frothy the Kilkenny can be.
That's
Quite nice.
That's a lot of head there.
That is a lot of head. I know.
Lady Wasser says, happy birthday.
Oh, thank you, Lady Wasser.
Various gift party cake and balloon emoji.
Fantastic.
Claude Simeon.
Thank you,
for
Claude
2.
Simeon.
Vish,
He says hi.
Wait.
He says hi, Vish.
Analog smiley face. Oh, hi, Dr. Kipp. Analog smiley face. And Tori Swansinger.
Thank you, Tori.
Yeah.
All right. So, flaunting your ability to digest gluten.
Yep.
Maybe I am.
From Falcon Bridge. And from Jennifer Silvas.
Thank you.
It's one of your
Bridge and Jennifer Silvas.
One of your students, right?
No. Actually, Jennifer is not. Are any of my students?
Not in your Hebrew class. Okay.
No, she is not.
It's
governor.
Mancunians.
Mancunians. Thank you for that. I didn't learn that when I was there. So good to see you, Governor, by the way. All right. So I've got my Kilkenny, and I'm ready to tell some stories here. We're going to dive in to the deep past. We're going to learn some lore. It's going to be fun. So thank you, S. Mill. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I actually pronounced Tori Swansiger's, or you pronounced Tori Swansiger's last name.
Thank you for letting me know, because in real life, I have a very difficult name for people to get correct. So I always appreciate when people let me know that I've done it right. So
awesome. All right. So The place to start, I think, is with the end of my grad school career. I wrote a master's thesis called, can we see that? 4Q 382, Elijah and the Dead Sea Scrolls in 2002 at Trinity Western University. And this was yes, this is not a standard size MA thesis. I got a really good grade on it. I actually won the thesis prize that year for it. And one of the reasons why was because a couple of the faculty members said that actually kind of looks like a PhD dissertation. And I was like, oh, cool. Well, I've written one. I guess that means I could probably write another one if I so wanted to. And then I started, I mean, I had already started thinking, but then I really seriously started thinking about going on and entering a PhD program. So,
my finished journey for $6.66. Hail Nero, hail Dr. Kill, and Vish, and hail birthdays. Mine's next week. Wow.
Yes.
Good Taurus energy in
Happy
here.
birthday, my unfinished
Cartwheel
journey.
cake party.
Awesome.
Benzion Castro, Yom
Hatikva.
Hatikva Sameach.
Bravo, Benzion Castro. Bravo.
Good.
Love
and
it.
Kipp's all the
I can say, Ahavtika, I love you.
Sorry.
God.
True. It's true. It just never gets old. It just never does. So, but we could do this.
Are there female rabbis?
Just a reminder to everyone that the one and only Dr. Justin Sledge will be here next week. So,
are we going to subject him to that brain rot clip?
I might. Who knows what'll happen? So
you want him to stay for the whole stream, right?
I do want him to stay for the whole stream, yes. So perhaps I should not.
Maybe don't show that till the end.
Maybe wait till the end. That's true. Yes. So 2002, I finished my MA. I won the the thesis prize. The work that I did in my MA thesis was on a really scrappy papyrus manuscript. 4Q 382 has been called a paraphrase of the Book of Kings. It's terrible. There's 140 fragments, and for my MA thesis, I thought it would be fun to look at every single one and try to see if I could make sense of this pile of scraps, basically. And yeah, it was tedious and time consuming, and I can get into those sorts of things. I'm pretty good at just jumping into tedious data and sorting through it, so that it fed into that instinct that I have. But along the way, I was also, because what I did in my MA thesis was the first part is a proper textual edition. So you'll see here, like I've got a transcription of each individual fragment, a translation. See how scrappy that is? Like there's like a few words there, right? On fragment 10. And then notes, lots and lots of notes on the readings. And honestly, sorry guys, it's all blurry and I can't do it. Oh no. Oh well. It's not important. So and that probably would have been enough. So I've there we are. 100 and oh, did I say 140? Oh wow, I forgot. There's actually 154 fragments. So I did the whole thing in the first half. And then I was like, and that probably would have been enough for an MA thesis, but then I did this whole thing in the second half where I did a synthesis of the material, and I added what? Let's see. Like 3 chapters to it, talking about the development of the figure Elijah in early Judaism and in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and in the New Testament as well. Yeah, I know. It's yeah. I guess that's fair. So it's yeah. So but this kind of got me really interested in what the Dead Sea Scrolls in particular were doing with prophets. And one of the things I started to notice is that there's a whole bunch of texts, not just biblical texts, but there's a whole bunch of texts in the collection of literature at Qumran that appear to be rewritten versions or paraphrases or retellings of stories of various prophets, from Ezekiel to Daniel to Jeremiah. And I was already kind of a fan of biblical Jeremiah anyways. There's a whole suite of manuscripts at Qumran that were identified as the so-called Apocryphon of Jeremiah. It exists in its extent in like 5 copies. Some people will tell you 6, but don't believe them. And I talk about that in my PhD dissertation. But in terms of this question about prophets at Qumran, I kind of got this bug in my ear, and I started to develop a PhD proposal from it. Now, one of the things that I also really noticed when I was looking at this material was that there are commentaries in the Dead Sea Scrolls on specific books of the prophets, like the book of Isaiah. There's several commentaries called Pesharim, where the individual sections, individual verses, prophecies, phrases from the book of Isaiah were then, cited verbatim and then provided a comment, an explanation, some sort of additional prophetic fulfillment that was taking place in the present day of the people who wrote and collected these texts. So there's Pesharim for Isaiah, for Nahum, for Micah. There's Pesharim for the Psalms. And what I also noticed was that there's no Pesharim for other prophetic books, which seem kind of interesting to me, like Jeremiah and like Ezekiel. But we've got these seemingly several copies of this seemingly sizable set of texts which feature narratives about these figures in the Dead Sea Scrolls community. And on the flip side of that, where we have, lots of texts of Isaiah and we have lots of Pesharim dedicated to Isaiah, there's nothing biographical like that in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So right away, the question that I had exiting my MA and starting to think about my PhD is, what the fuck? Why is this? Why are some prophets texts that we read and we interpret, and other prophets are lives and anecdotes and teachings? Hey Vish, how's it going? Oh, you're muted. Oh,
Chuck, KV.
Chuck is one of my students. Well,
Yeah,
thank you, sir.
For 25. Yeah, happy birthday, beer. Cheers. Look forward to reading your thesis. Thank you for the super chat.
Thank you.
Jennifer for 5. Were there prophets not in the Bible? New prophets of whom I've not yet learned?
I mean, I think the teacher of righteousness qualifies as a prophet. So, you know, it thank you,
Latoria?
Latoria, for the birthday wishes. Matt T, another
Matt
one of
T
my
for
Hebrew
20.
students. Thank you.
Yeah.
The Hebrew instructor extraordinaire. I am
Birthday drink.
having a birthday drink on you.
All right.
Brilliant.
And
how
Riley's
can we read
asking,
the
how do we
thesis?
read it? We're gonna go through some of it today.
Shall we? What happens if I post the illegal link?
I'm not gonna
Do
stop you.
things? Okay. So I'll type something. Listen, I'm gonna type something into the chat. Okay.
And
if
you
you're
know what? If it's
interested,
not legal, just don't click on it, because that would
don't
be
do that.
wrong or something. We don't support doing illegal things.
We don't.
Don't go sailing the 7 seas. Don't go to
Don't
this
go sailing the
website.
7 seas.
Yeah, don't do
So I
that.
typed something in the chat, and there's another one I will type into the chat. There's 2 places that that maybe you could go and find it. You know,
If you
who
were the sort
knows?
of
Who knows
person
what could happen?
to acquire
If
things
you
without, paying for
could
them, which
you
we
could find
don't
it easily enough
endorse.
just by punching my name into one of those sites, the title, or just type in the K4 Apocryphon of Jeremiah. But yeah, so that's where this exploration began. And at that point I started actually looking into. Now I left Langley, British Columbia, which is where I was living at the time, where Trinity is located. And I went back to Calgary, Alberta, which is my hometown, for a couple of years. And while I was there, I was looking into various PhD programs and working. And I was also working on I put together like a paper proposal for the Society of Biblical Literature annual meeting, which is, and I was a freshly graduated MA student. I hadn't even entered a PhD program yet. I was still looking, but I also thought that this was a good way to parlay my candidacy into something fairly tangible, and it would give me an opportunity to meet and to interview with some of the various schools that I was looking at. So some of the places that I considered attending right at the outset were the University of Toronto, University of Notre Dame, NYU. I was keen on going and studying with Larry Schiffman at NYU, and Jewish Theological Seminary, also in New York, and the Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati, and a couple of the UK schools, Cambridge in particular, and the University of Manchester. And the reason why I was very interested in going to the University of Manchester at the outset, Manchester was actually fairly close to the top of my list, in large part because George Brooke was the John Rylands Professor of Biblical Criticism and Exegesis there at the time, and had written fairly extensively on this question of what is called Rewritten Bible. That's texts that appear to be in the Bible that have been basically reconstituted into something else, something new. It's something we see in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And this question of rewritten Bible was a pretty hot one, as early as the 70s or the 1980s, but it was still something that the scholars were talking about all the way through to the early aughts, when I had finished my MA and I was exploring possibilities for PhD programs. So I started getting in touch with scholars at some of these schools. I started the application process at a few of them. I set up meetings at the annual meeting of the Society of Biblical Literature in Atlanta, Georgia in 2003. And I also got a paper accepted for presentation in the Qumran section. And
That's
which was
fancy.
right. Yeah, I kind of thought that was a good in. I'm pretty sure I was the only the only MA graduate, non-PhD student at the MA at the meeting that had a paper on the schedule. So, and the paper was based on my MA thesis. So, yeah, I went to the meeting. I presented my paper. I talked to a couple of people from different schools, and I met George Brooke for the first time and had a really nice conversation with him. And in the course of our conversation, I discovered that he really had a strong handle on the direction that I wanted to go in terms of some of the questions that I was asking with regards to what's going on with prophets in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I'll be honest here too. I was pretty spooked by the U.S. schools because of the GRE. When I took the GRE, I took it 3 times, and I did okay. I did okay the second time, but some of the places where I was applying, like they had like minimum scores, entry scores of like 2,000 for the GRE, and I was still not.
Well, your first mistake is not being a descendant of some wealthy benefactor or alumni of a school.
Yeah, right. That's the first error. So,
yeah.
Manchester it was. I was admitted to the program at the start of 2005, literally January 2005. I started at the University of Manchester. And the very first thing that I started to do when I was there, and as any what any good PhD supervisor will tell her or his students, the first thing you need to do is just start reading all the stuff you can from and develop a history of scholarship on your research question. And it took me the entire first year of my program to do my history of scholarship. So I was reading like articles and books written by George Footmore back in the 1920s about Midrash and rabbinic traditions, and Louis Ginsburg from the same period about this kind of stuff. And then in through the 50s and the 60s. There's one book in particular that was published by Geza Vermesh called I think it's called Scripture and Tradition in 1968, which really set the agenda for this question of rewritten Bible into the current world in which we live, where for a long time these texts that were generally regarded as hagiographic embellishments on biblical stories or teachings from the distant past tended to be construed under this umbrella as rabbinic midrash, as these extensions, these fun little departures
bonus content
from it's bonus content, right?
It's DLC.
So, but the ways that scholars were treating these sorts of texts in the early to the mid part of the 20th century was to basically retroject backwards into antiquity about these sorts of things, and in the process provide this artificial sense of canon that wasn't real. We tended to talk about biblical texts or parabiblical texts or non-biblical texts as if there was such a thing as a Bible at the time when the Dead Sea Scrolls were written and collected. So,
God, that is the least interesting question out of any of them in the field. Is what was canon? Is this canon? What's even canon? Like, I
really
could not care less. I want to know how they used the text. I want to know, was it popular? Were they like the only weirdos using it? Were they, the innovators of it? Were they riffing on something? Like, those are the questions I care about. And that was something I ran into when I'm starting to develop like my own kind of tentative research questions. And I kept running into all these papers from like, early on, and they're just talking about canon. I'm like, I do not care. Don't care at all. Just tell me what the features are. Is there new stuff, missing stuff? Like, those are the kinds of things that make the cogs turn. So
those are the
it was really cool
things,
to hear.
right?
Yeah, it's cool to hear what like kind of got the wheels turning for you. Like,
what
what sorts of things were making you go,
And George, Professor Brooke, was just an excellent choice to lead this project, because this is what he has been doing in his own research, is pushing these boundaries of where do we find this dividing line, this artificial dividing line between what's scripture versus what's not scripture when it comes to looking at texts of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And he kept on pushing that envelope, right? Questions of authority, questions of what's the word I'm looking for, of sacredness in terms of the literature, questions about what a lot of the Qumran texts that do seem to be riffing on scripture in a variety of ways, questions about those texts in this larger cluster, and whether or not, because the way this used to be treated for a long time was that in the Pesharim, for example, these so-called commentaries on the biblical texts, the so-called biblical texts, it was assumed that these were like modern commentaries, right? Like, a scholar will sit down and write a commentary to help you understand the contents of a particular book of the Bible, like Leviticus or like Joshua or like Chronicles, right? But that's not a replacement, and it doesn't provide, it's not a layer of additional authority within a religious perspective on these, on the sacred texts themselves. So this tended to be the way in which even scholars would approach these texts that were riffing on scriptural traditions, scriptural stories, scriptural texts and rules. And a lot of what George did was try and turn this on its head, and introduced a lot of questions with regards to how we're even construing this idea of authority in antiquity. Like, it's an important question, in particular when it comes to understanding a lot of the historical developments of what occurred in early Judaism. So this was part of that whole first year when I was developing my history of scholarship, just reading a ton. And by the time I was ready for my probationary review, which happened at the end of my first year, where I sat down with my supervisor, Professor Brooke, and my internal examiner, who at the time was Philip S. Alexander, who is a brilliant rabbinic scholar, a delightful Irish gentleman who I used to love going and hanging out at the pub with and drinking McEwen's, but I don't have any, so I'm drinking Kilkenny. I sat down with him. I had a nice review of that history of scholarship, and at this time, George started to talk to me about problematizing Rewritten Bible. That's how he put it. He introduced me to this word, problematizing. One of the steps in writing a dissertation is to problematize the work of other scholars who have gone before you. Find the holes in it. Figure out what they did wrong. Look to see what the problems are and explore ways in which you can fix them. So that was cool. That was fun. A lot of scholars, like even contemporary scholars, like Moshe Bernstein or Michael Siegel, who's written an excellent book most recently has written an excellent book on the book of Daniel that's published by De Gruyter. It's also too expensive, so maybe you could also go to that webpage to find it. I don't know. Maybe you could. Some of these guys would continued to view this question of the circulation of, let's call them just scriptural traditions in and around the Second Temple period, as somehow auxiliary or supplementary to the biblical text, even though we don't have a biblical text yet. So these were some of my conversation partners, some of the people that I was critiquing in the course of my work. It was around the same time that I was introduced to the social theory work of Barry Schwartz and Gary Allen Fine. Barry Schwartz wrote a fantastic book called Abraham Lincoln and the Forge of National Memory, I believe is the title of the book, where he explores this question of how the reputation of famous figures contribute to social building, to the construction of communities and ideologies, where effectively a famous figure, by virtue of their reputation, starts to take on and internalize. I'm gonna turn my phone off. Sorry, guys.
Ooh.
Was that rude? There we go.
Tell you what, while you're paused,
Doing the phone.
there's some
I'll
super
stop
chats.
for a drink. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's make sure we catch up with the correct one. Okay. Hankashi for 10. Happy Earth Strong. In your course,
Thank you,
you made
Hankashi.
a quick mention about Jeremiah/Lamentations being possibly written by women, actually. What clues are there that led to this being a possibility? Salute.
Salute. So this was drawn from, there's a couple of things. I wrote an article. Just a sec.
Well, now we have some dead air while he goes to grab a book off a shelf.
Whoopsies.
Cool.
Sorry.
Professionals.
I wrote an article in this volume, Men and Masculinity in the Hebrew Bible and Beyond, edited by Ovidio Krienga. This is actually published by Sheffield Phoenix Press, which notoriously is the same publisher for Richard Carrier's book on the historical Jesus. But trust me, guys, trust me, this is a good book. But okay. This was actually the very first thing I published. Is an article. Where is it here? I'm gonna cover my legal name here if I can. There we go. There. Jeremiah, masculinity, and the portrayal as the lamenting prophet, where I talk about this. And this is developed from some feminist critical scholars by the names of Susan Haddocks, I believe. It was a long time ago. And Atalaya, I gotta look this up in my bibliography because it's been a long time. Atalaya Brenner, and there's a Dutch scholar, which means her name is both difficult to pronounce and remember. Oh yeah, Fokeline van Dijk Hemmes. They did a lot of work on the basically isolating and locating what they called traditions of women, feminist traditions within the biblical text, and they really keyed in on Lamentations as a possibility, as a text that was potentially actually, if not written by women, based on dirges that were uttered by women. And the reason for this is because in all the information that we have, the textual data, as well as the bits of archaeological data, not necessarily from Canaan and Israel, but from the broader ancient Near East, in all the information that we have, this was part of what women did. Women performed dirges. Women were, this is one of their chores, one of their lots, was to sing and lament at funerals. And this is what the Book of Lamentations is. The Book of Lamentations is a collection of dirges uttered over the destruction of, uttered over the dead Jerusalem, basically, right? And the argument from these fine scholars, which I've adopted, I find it fairly convincing, is that this makes sense within the social world of ancient post-exilic Israel, that women would have performed these sorts of songs. Now, whether or not they actually wrote them down is another question, but I'm fairly convinced that the source of these dirges in Lamentations is probably women lamenting over the destroyed city. And it's quite interesting in how that has been co-opted now by a figure like Jeremiah, who, and this is something maybe some people aren't aware of at the outset either. The first verse of the book of Jeremiah is a gloss. It's not present in the original text. It's a gloss that basically credits the laments to Jeremiah himself. These are the lamentations that Jeremiah uttered over the city of Jerusalem after it was destroyed by the Babylonians. And what's really kind of sad about that is that when you read through the actual text of Jeremiah, stuff that he might have actually written, stories about him contained in that book, he's not a friend of women, not by a long stretch. One of Jeremiah's tactics as a prophet.
Yeah, I've chanted from Aicha. Yeah. Read
One
through
of
some of that.
one of Jeremiah's tactics in his prophetic repertoire is to denigrate people by feminizing them and basically calling them women. He blames women for the breach of the covenant and the ultimate fate of the city of Jerusalem. He screams at the women in Taphanes in Jeremiah chapter 42 and 43, and their commitment to the Maleket Hashemayim, the queen of the sky, the goddess Asherah. So Jeremiah is no friend of women, and it's kind of ironic that he ends up as the titled prophet for this book in the Hebrew Bible, where I would say if there is a book that was written by women, it's probably this one.
I mean, women having an idea or making something only to have it later yanked and the credit taken by a guy. That's a tale as old as time.
Tale as old as time, right?
Yeah. So,
Same story, different day.
S. Mill for
Two
5
questions.
says 2 questions. Good book on wild interpretations in the Pesherim and Talmud.
On those things together or just individually?
I was gonna say because the Talmud's much later than this, but
It certainly is.
what do you mean by wild interpretations?
I
What's
guess,
the
right?
metric for that? Because my bar for crazy wild interpretations, the more Talmud that I study, the higher that bar gets.
A wild interpretations in the Pesherim. I mean, some of the stuff that James Tabor has written about the Pesherim is kind of out there. But I don't know how much of it's actually right. Really, my favorite scholar on the Pesherim is a woman by the name of Shani Beren Soref. She did her Ph.D. dissertation on Pesher Nahum, and she's written some good summary material in a handful of introductory texts. So I would recommend her work. My Dr. Fodder, George Brooke, has also written about the Pesherim. He's got some good essays about the Pesherim in his book on the New Testament and the Dead Sea Scrolls. So you could go look. I don't know how wild they are. I think they're, I think they're challenging in terms of they're pushing the boundaries of the ways in which scholars have handled this literature in the past. So, and I think that's good. But
2.
Thanks for the
Anything like these
super
wild
chat,
interpretations in Greek myth or in Greek myth commentary that you know of? This is the second part of that question.
I'm not sure which wild interpretations we might have in mind.
Talking about they had mentioned what wild interpretations are the Pesherim and Talmud, but in the chat they later amended that to just Dead Sea Scrolls. So anything like those wild interpretations.
So, and I guess, I one of the things that I think characterizes the handling of biblical texts by the writers and collectors of the Dead Sea Scrolls is the ways in which they are writing themselves into the biblical texts. They're effectively seeing their own movement and their own time and their own circumstances spoken of in the prophecies of the Hebrew Bible. Now, I have to confess that I don't know enough about Greek myth, I'm afraid, to provide any sort of comparative analog for that or for what the writers and collectors of the Dead Sea Scrolls were doing with their texts. I'm sorry about that, but I just don't know. And unlike some channels who are going to answer every one of your guys' questions, whether they know the answer or not, I don't do that.
Just make one up.
I'm not making shit up.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to try this as G, even though I want to say G. So just letting you know. For $4.99, are there copies of Jeremiah in the Dead Sea Scrolls that are significantly longer or shorter than Maseretic? Anything theologically different?
Yeah. So one of the things that we see in the Dead Sea Scrolls are copies, Hebrew copies of the text that looks like it was closest to the same text used by the Greek translators of the book of Jeremiah. And if you know anything about Septuagint Jeremiah, it's substantially shorter than Masoretic Jeremiah by a factor of around 12 or 13% difference between the two. And not only that, it's arranged rather dramatically differently. I think one of the characteristic theological shifts between Septuagint Jeremiah and Masoretic Jeremiah is the focus of Jeremiah's prophetic critique against Egypt, which is sort of the that's what's going on in the Septuagint version. Just in terms of the arrangement of the material, but there's also a bunch of glosses in the Masoretic text where there's a shift in terms of what's going on there. So for Jeremiah, and I think this works historically as well, he was probably best understood as a Babylonian sympathizer. Jeremiah was pro Babylon. He was pro conquest. He was like, just put your guns down and cooperate when Nebuchadnezzar gets here. He was path of least resistance as far as the Babylonians were concerned, but he was fiercely opposed to any sort of alliance with Egypt. And this is a lot of what was taking place at around the time of the exilic crisis, was this vacillating of the small kingdom of Judah, the city of Jerusalem, between these two powers. Nebuchadnezzar was determined to push Egypt out of the Levant and to take control of that very important trade corridor that runs up and down the Mediterranean Sea. And there were moments where Egypt was resistant and continued to push the forces, the Babylonian forces back. I should say this is Nabopolassar at this time, prior to Nebuchadnezzar's accession of the throne sometime in 598, 97, I think. But anyways, that's kind of what's going on, and Judah's sort of stuck in the middle. So depending on which way the wind is shifting and who's in power, there's movement there on whether or not you want to ally with Egypt or ally with Babylon. And there were a couple times where first the Judean king Jehoiakim made the mistake of allying with Egypt, and the Babylonians came into Judah, and this was the first siege of Jerusalem in 597, and they basically deposed the king. They eventually killed him, and they installed their own ruler, who was an uncle of the king at the time. And they exacted a massive tribute from the city, basically bankrupting the city and making things, terrible for the people who live there. And they continued like this for another 10 years. And the situation seems to have been kind of bleak as a result of this. But when Egypt gained some traction and power again, Jehoiachin tried the same thing. And, again, the results were disastrous. And it's this back and forth kind of thing. When you read through the prophecies of Jeremiah, particularly within the Septuagint version, which is the earlier version of the text, he's very obviously opposed to doing anything with Egypt. He's like, stay the hell away from those people. He's somewhat, but not overly, sympathetic to Babylon. And then in some of the Masoretic revisions, this changes, right? Like there's glosses in there about Nebuchadnezzar being being chosen by God in the Maseretic revision of Jeremiah. But then there's a renewed emphasis also on the future judgment of Babylon in Masoretic Jeremiah as well. So and we have both in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And one of the things that I did after I finished my dissertation and in getting my book ready for publication was explored this idea about how the Apocryphon of Jeremiah, this particular text that also survives in the Dead Sea Scrolls, contributes to this question, where I think it might what this text might be is an alternative to the Septuagint version of Jeremiah. So maybe this is even like a third version of this text in some form. So there's a lot of interesting things going on in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Sorry, I rattled on about that a long time.
Okay. One question
All
was
this
just clarifying, like how big the scroll actually is. But
which one are we talking about?
the Jeremiah Apocryphon.
So we have surviving. Now it's really fragmentary, and it exists in. I said 4Q. I have to count them: 4Q 385A, 87, 88A, 89. So it exists in 4 copies. So yeah, fragmentary copies. It's not a gigantic manuscript. I think it probably in total it was probably maybe 25 30 columns of text. I think the one copy that we can actually reconstruct with some confidence contains about 25 lines. So it would be about the size of like the book of Daniel. So certainly a dramatically abridged version, if this is intended as a sort of version of Jeremiah, a dramatically abridged version. So yeah, it's but it's a popular text in the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's got 4 copies. You got 6 copies of Jeremiah, and I think only 2 of those are copies of the Masoretic, of something like the Masoretic text. So it belongs. I think it belongs in this conversation, and this was one of the guiding questions of my dissertation is what do we do with this text relative even to like the book of Jeremiah. So yeah.
Okay. Just real quick, must have assured me that both the canon existed then and was even identical to the eventual Protestant canon, word for word.
What is the deal, chat? Maybe you can help me with this. What is the fixation of Protestants, of evangelical Protestants, on the priority of the Masoretic text? Because I do not understand it. I just don't.
Well, it legitimizes their claims to like univocality and inspiration because, like, if it's the same that's been passed down, presumably, for centuries and centuries and centuries and thousands of years, like that means we're the right ones.
You don't have to do that though. Like you don't have to do that.
Makes
like
sense
scholars,
in their brain,
scholars will tell you that there's piles of texts in the
they don't listen to scholars.
The Greek translation.
Do you think Bill Pewsitter cares about what scholars say? No. In fact, anybody that's like one of those uppity little academic scholars, they're just atheists trying to like get you to fall away from the truth of God.
Probably.
So yeah, clearly.
You're probably right.
Nitty says,
"Thank you, Nitty.
Nitty for money this time, $20.
Wow,
I'm
thanks,
publicly huffed up, blessed up, and ready to die."
Oh yes. Do you know about this, Vish? I don't think you know about this.
No. Sounds like a preacher.
I actually, by the way, Nitty, I don't think it's blessed up. I actually think it's flexed up. Huffed up, flexed up, and ready to die. There's
blessed up sounds cooler with the youth pastor.
What sounds cooler with what? Blessed up sounds cooler with the youth pastor. That's true.
Yeah.
But flexed up kind of sounds like a Wes Huff thing, doesn't it?
I don't. Anyway. Okay.
So Nitty had a stream last week where he found Wes Huff posted a video on his channel, of a song, a tribute song made by like an underground rapper about him. I actually think I said that. I think I posted the link in the.
You did. You did tell us about that in the niche market. That's right. That's right. Okay.
Oh my god.
Yeah, Nitty also clarified it was giving blessed up as benefit of the doubt. And also Maseretic text like, oh well, God's perfect and unchanging. The Bible text itself is perfect and unchanging. Okay, yeah. I mean, anyway. Okay. My Unfinished Sock for 2. Don't obsess over caliber of canon.
Thank you, My Unfinished Sock. Very strong, very good advice.
Lesson serious. I've been fascinated by the suggestions that maybe Qumran didn't like the Pentateuch. Maybe they were Enochian, or Jubilees was more, quote, like authoritative. Don't remember who said it though.
So this is part of the this is part of the school of the Enoch seminar. Gabriele Boccaccini, working off of Paul Sacco, I believe, another Italian scholar. They're both Italian scholars. Have promoted this idea, and I'm quite fond of this as well. That there was a stream of quote unquote Enochic Judaism, which did not like the Mosaic Torah and rather preferred this Aramaic literature, including the Book of Enoch, as well as some of the other Aramaic texts that we now know from the Dead Sea Scrolls, and that this was a group that was at various times in charge at the Jerusalem temple, and were, happened to be disenfranchised by the Pharisees and then the Sadducees when they were competing for control of the temple. And it was out of this group that the Essene movement grew and went on to found the community at Qumran. There's a lot of really interesting stuff there. The idea that the Book of Enoch and some of this other Aramaic literature was in competition with the Mosaic Torah is pretty cool. I agree. You're muted, Bish. Thank you, Susan Cameron.
Man, sitting here making a hilarious joke, and I was the only one that could hear it. Good job, me.
Oh my god.
Blame FPV. For 666, blessed be the one who takes the like button and dashes it against the rocks.
Smash that like button. So, by the way, there's a Jeremiah connection to Psalm 137 as well. I bet you didn't know that.
Oh yeah, because I mean it's by the rivers of Babylon.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Real quick, David Betancourt says their shirt was just delivered.
Woo!
Yeah.
Brilliant.
In reference to the Lamentations and women having stuff posted. Women be shopping, women be weaving temple cloths. Women be keeping the Queen of Heaven satisfied. Like, yeah, you try to bake your own cakes to the Queen of Heaven. Gosh.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. John Goodrum. What does Kipp think of Eisenman and Tabor's work on the Dead Sea Scrolls?
I think it's dated. So it's very 1990s. It's very much in the same vein of what a collection of guys were doing around that period of time with the scrolls in terms of how they read them against and in conversation with the New Testament in particular, and exploring the origins of the Jesus movement or the John the Baptist movement. And this was a very popular way of reading the literature in the 1990s, in large part because we suddenly had an influx of material to look at. Something that happened in 1991 was basically the release, the dam broke, all the material from Cave 4Q, which nobody had really had the opportunity to see yet, was suddenly available to the broader scholarly public for the first time. And so guys were reading this stuff and going, oh my God, look, this sounds very much like what I see in the New Testament. Wow, this sounds a lot like how Jesus fits into early Judaism of the of Roman Palestine. So they started writing a lot of these sorts of articles and books about this sort of stuff. I think that over the course of the last couple of decades and with some more sober study, a lot of that enthusiasm has been greatly tempered, and rightly so. So yeah, I tend to not agree with Eisenman and Tabor. They're products of their time.
Rixie, soulful dyslexic, purple.
Aw, that's nice.
Man, you should have been there on Saturday. That's a good joke. You'll have to catch up on
I
the
was
stream.
saving democracy, Vish. If I don't,
I
if I was
know,
there,
I know.
you know this.
You would already be up on the lore. Okay. Kipp is always apologizing for going on a long time, as though that is not what we came here for. Exactly.
I feel like I feel like in my mind, right? Like in my head, in this brain that I keep in here with this bandana, I imagine that I like to do a 2-hour stream, maybe a 2.5-hour stream. And then, you know, they're much longer than that. And I feel bad after that. And I'm like, shoot, that was much longer than 2 hours or 2.5 hours. So, but thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. That does make me feel better on my birthday.
On your birthday.
Are we done with super chats for now?
Yeah, we're caught up on that.
All right.
Now that we're an hour and 13 minutes and you can actually like to the dissertation topic.
So we've been talking about it. Yeah,
so we have. We just, we're taking the scenic route.
Yeah. So I think I left off talking about Barry Schwartz and Gary Allen Fine and their work on collective memory and reputation and authority, right? In Barry Schwartz's book on Abraham Lincoln and the Forge of National Memory, he opens the book with this really great story about the funeral train of Abraham Lincoln. There's this famous, and I think this was after he was assassinated. The body was transported to Washington, D.C. for the funeral and for internment, or it might have been, I don't know if it was from where it was somebody. An American's going to have to help me. You're an American, Vish. You should know this. So where was Lincoln assassinated? Somebody knows, I'm sure.
Ford's Theater.
Somebody knows about the Lincoln train.
State?
Yeah. Somebody in the chat help me out. You should know this. The Lincoln train. Where did it go?
I'm playing on a handicap right now. Normally I would have had that little factoid ready to go, but
wow.
Those photons are still trying to bounce their way out of the corona.
Andrew says it's in a theater. Thank you.
Well, yeah. Theater.
So, but Barry Schwartz opens his book by basically probing. He starts by looking at all the historical information there is. Was it in DC? So this must have been a train from DC to Ohio, I guess. Right?
He's not technically a native of Illinois, but he is
Illinois.
claimed by them overwhelmingly. Like he
I
was
don't know.
technically born in like Kentucky, but he spent the
Okay,
majority of his life
that's right,
and
in
career
a log
Illinois, so,
cabin,
yeah.
right? Okay.
Oh, it's
But
not
there's
like
this
that.
like there's these famous Springfield, Illinois. That's right. There's these famous stories, right, of this funeral train carrying the body of Lincoln and people lined up on the sides of the tracks weeping as the body passed by. And it actually reminds me, so I have to tell you, I used to listen to a lot of Christian. I grew up listening to Christian heavy metal music and rock music.
Nice.
Right. I still listen to a lot of it. And there's a phenomenal song by a band called the Resurrection Band. They're very, very old school. They trace their roots back to the Jesus People movement in Chicago from like the 1970s. But they wrote a song called Lincoln's Train. Such a good song. Passing through these ruins, Mr. Lincoln's train goes by, spilling smoke into these bloody fields. All the people stood and cried. Our tears are all the same color. We can all hold hands and mourn. But me, I'm still asking myself why I'm not freer than I was before. Mr. Lincoln, are you free now? Was it worth what it finally cost? If I had something to believe in, I could bear this endless cross. It's an awesome song. But this is what Gary, the reason it's such an awesome song too is because this is an image that has been basically forged into the American national consciousness. And Barry Schwartz, in the opening chapter of his book, goes through all the historical documentation of this event, this funeral train that made its way from, I suppose, this, has somebody helped me out with this yet, where the funeral train went?
Well, he was shot in D.C., but if he was buried in his what he would claim as his
Does
home
anybody
state,
know
it
where?
would be Illinois.
Okay, so it probably went to Illinois. Yeah, they are fantastic. Triceratops YEC's Learn Chicago Style Challenge. You should look up the song. It's a great song. It's called Lincoln's Train. But so it's no, not Striper. Jesus Tales. Jesus Christ.
Chuck says winger.
Jeez. Anyways, the point here is that
got it.
That
Thank you.
Springfield.
Podcast.
Okay. So it went through 7 states on the way there from DC. So when Barry Schwartz looked at the actual historical information, the reliable historical information about the funeral train, and then compared and contrasted that to how this story developed over time and how it contributed to the national memory of Abraham Lincoln, and how it effectively turned him into this this civil rights hero, this paragon, which is a bit of a myth when reflecting on the actual history of who Lincoln
he
was.
was late to that party.
He was
extremely
very late. But it's an important image, and it's one that has had a founding importance in the collective memory of y'all Americans. But this is the kind of work that I was
look
reading.
Where it
this
got
kind
us.
Of stuff. Right. We will not talk about that. But where this got me reading this kind of work was starting to think about Jeremiah and other figures from the Bible, important characters, if you will, David, Abraham, Daniel, Isaiah, less so as a figure, Ezekiel, certainly, Joshua. These figures as Adam, Noah. I mean, I could go on, but I'll stop now. As you know, taking on this same sort of role where these myths start to develop and coalesce around them, even beyond what's recorded in the texts of the more ancient texts that we have in the Bible, the oldest forms of these stories about these figures, and how they're informed by what's happening in the national memory, and how that also changes and affects the national memory. So that's a lot of what I was trying to do in my dissertation, and everything was going fine for those first. I'm gonna close this. Those first few years that I was working away on it. Here, this is just to give you a sense of what I'm talking about. This is what Barry Schwartz says with regards to this connection between history and memory. He says that history always reflects the ideals and sentiments that commemoration expresses. Commemoration is the ways in which we remember these people who become important in the national consciousness. So, Lincoln's train, the stories of Lincoln's train is a commemoration. Commemoration is always rooted in historical knowledge and can only be intellectually compelling when it symbolizes values whose past existence history documents. He goes on to say that collective memory is based on two sources of belief about the past: history and commemoration. Collective memory is a representation of the past embodied in both historical evidence and commemorative symbolism. Gary Allen Fine did
way fewer words.
So basically, what that
I was
means.
Gonna say, people remember things they have emotional attachment to.
That's a good one, and those emotions will affect the way that you remember things. So, and that starts to interfere with what you think history is. So this yeah, it's an excellent book. I'll recommend these two books: Lincoln and the Forge of National Memory by Barry Schwartz, and Difficult Reputations by Gary Allen Fine were very, very important work in my dissertation research. So and what so that's what Barry Schwartz did, was basically investigate and compare and contrast what's going on with the actual history of Abraham Lincoln, the Civil War, his assassination, all that stuff, and how then is that handled by later's retellers of the story of Abraham Lincoln, to the point where we start to accept these as reliable, accurate presentations of the past. I tend to think much the same thing is happening when it comes to, I mean, certainly within the biblical text, I think that's a lot of what's going on. But this literature that exists outside what we have identified as the Bible, well, that's in conversation with the Bible, what I got in the habit of calling representations of traditions, these older traditions that you see in places like the book of Jeremiah. What's going on there is very much the same thing, where people's imaginations about who these figures were and what they did started to basically bleed into the histories about them. So this is a two-way street. Traditions are affecting the ways in which we think about ourselves now, but the way we think about ourselves now also affect the ways in which we read these traditions, and they change them to the point that they become different and new and contemporary. And over time, you start to forget where that line is. So my approach was this historical collective memory sort of way of evaluating the text that I was saying, and my investigation at this point basically became a survey, not just of the Dead Sea Scrolls, but I expanded that to include all sorts of traditions of Jeremiah and Second Temple Judaism, from the book of Daniel, where he's, remembered as the prophet of the 70 years, to recollections of him as the prophet of the new covenant. He appears in Second Maccabees in a couple of places. He's the prophet who hides the temple furniture, basically the Ark of the Covenant and the menorah. He's also instrumental in the battle against Nicanor, the Pharaoh of Egypt, in Second Maccabees 15 or chapter 17. He actually inspires Judas Maccabee to victory. He gives him a sword, which is pretty badass. So Jeremiah has this important role to play in early Judaism that extends beyond just this text that we've inherited from him. And it seems to be that this is the most important thing that early Jewish readers got about Jeremiah, because curiously, one of the things that we also see is not a lot of direct citations of the book of Jeremiah in the Qumran literature, in some of these other early Jewish texts in the New Testament. There's very few actual citations of the book of Jeremiah, but there's plenty of places in these texts where you can tell that they've got stories or even texts from Jeremiah kind of kicking around and echoing in the recesses of their mind as these writers are writing things down. So that's generally where I was going and what I was doing in my exploration of Jeremiah. Now, this required a pretty deep dive into these manuscripts, the Apocryphon of Jeremiah. Maybe bring up the pictures, Vish. There's
Okay.
5 manuscripts.
Apocryphon.
This is in under bullet point number 3. So there's 5 manuscripts
Go grab it.
signed to the Apocryphon of Jeremiah by the official editor. There's and this is where some of my dissertation started to explore new ground. For the first couple of years, I was fairly convinced that I knew where I was going in my work, that I was doing this survey of Jeremiah traditions. So this is 4Q387. This is one of the copies of the Apocryphon of Jeremiah. This is the best preserved one, but it's not the most extensively preserved one. It has the largest fragments, and you can actually see text on these color photographs, which is a bit unusual. It's in relatively good shape compared to some of the other ones. Do you want to maybe go to 4Q385? Let's look at that one. 4Q385A is the actual text as it was identified by Devorah Dumont. Look at these ones. Like, they're black, essentially. You can barely read them. You can kind of see text on the surface of these fragments, but not even most of them. You need the infrared photographs to even be able to see what's going on with these. So that's 4Q385A. And then there's 2 more manuscripts, 4Q388A and 4Q389. We all know this is 4Q388A. It's also in pretty good shape. And this is probably the oldest copy. I think it's the oldest copy of the Apocryphon of Jeremiah. And it's interesting because in the course of my dissertation work, I started to develop some text critical ideas with regards to these manuscripts. I'll talk about that in a minute. Let's look at the last one, 4Q389. Let's see. And then we'll look at 4Q392. So this is 4Q389. Again, another one of the copies. The reason why we know these are all copies of the same text is because they contain textual overlaps with one another. So basically, what the official editor did when she started reviewing this material, she started putting it together because of all the places where these individual manuscripts overlap. And then she started to use those overlaps with other manuscripts to reconstruct a larger picture of what this composition actually looked like. So, and what Devore Dumont decided was that, and I'll just pull up here. Maybe I'll do this. Boy, my voice is starting to go. I feel like I've been talking a lot. It's been an hour and a half, I guess. So this is for Q390, which is a special manuscript. Devore Dumont thinks that this is part of the Apocryphon of Jeremiah. And I and most other scholars disagree with her. This is a separate composition altogether. And this was an important feature in my dissertation work, and in particular in the book that I ended up writing based on my dissertation. When we were looking at some of these pictures earlier, Vish made off stage behind the screen before the stream started. Vish made a comment about how small these fragments are. You really get a strong sense of what you're dealing with when you get an idea of how tiny these actually are.
Yeah, the little image for scale, I didn't really pay much attention to it at first, but then it caught my eye and I was like,
Vish, you're muted. Can anybody hear her?
Okay.
There you go. I can't hear you.
You cannot hear
me. Can anybody else hear Vish? Let me know if you can hear her. I can't hear her. Why can't I hear her?
They said that they can hear me.
Chuck can hear her. Why can't I hear you? Damn it.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that. Anyway,
no! I can't hear you. Why can't I hear you?
Tech issues. While he's fixing it, I was noticing that the
should I drop out and come back?
Oh man, I was noticing that the measurements for most of these little fragments, they really are these itty bitty little scraps.
I still can't hear anything.
And
guys, Vish, should I drop out and come back in?
Sure.
Okay. I'll be back, guys. I apologize for ruining this.
It's his birthday. He's gonna be right back. So thanks for hanging with us, folks, while we have some technical issues. It's his birthday. I figured something unique was gonna happen. Yeah, while he's gone, let's get crazy.
9 hours.
There he is. Claude Simeon for 2. I'm here for Vish anyway. Who is this Kipp guy?
I think it is. I think my earbuds actually died.
Uh-oh. Well, it's your birthday.
I still can't hear anything though.
What?
God damn it.
The people can hear me. I'm not really sure why you can't hear me. Okay. The chat can hear both of us. Yeah, Triceratops. So I don't know why you can't hear me.
I cannot.
Anyway, you know, yeah, it's weird. I'm not sure why he can't hear me, but you know, hey, this is a Kipp stream. The titles are just suggestions anyway. So
there's the smoking gun.
Yeah. This is our present to Kipp, is making him feel like a colossal boomer. I think that's the chat and his audience at large is gifting him
maybe
the feeling of being a colossal boomer.
Wow.
Anything I can do to help?
I don't think so.
Adia Morgenstern, when you turn 52, you lose your hearing. That was
Brutal.
quick.
I'm gonna try this again.
Okay. All right. So I've got access to all his little scene clips, so we're just gonna have some fun
I
here.
can say, Ahavtika, I love you.
I'm sure that Kipp feels the love as he continuously troubleshoots technology before, during, and now after live streams. So, fun stuff. Yeah, everyone in the chat's definitely going for the IT crowd solution here. Just turn it off and turn it back on again. Let's see. There's a few good clips in here. But, oh, there you are.
I can hear now.
Hooray!
Jeez, that was annoying. I'm sorry. All right.
9 hours.
It's going to be.
That's what all that dead air felt like.
Wow. Oh dear. Well, yeah. Sorry about that, guys. That's really embarrassing. But here we are.
We're professionals.
We're
This isn't a Dapper
professionals.
Dinosaur stream, but take a drink.
I am taking a drink on my
That's fair.
on my second beer. So
Okay.
it's
yeah, we were kind of roasting you a little bit and making you
'cause
feel
I'm a
like
boomer.
boomer.
Yeah.
And Adia Morgenstern noted that when you turn 52, you lose your hearing. So.
Oh, good to know. Maybe that
Pretty
is the
soon,
problem.
You're gonna have one of those little earbuds, like a hearing aid that David Lynch's character had in Twin Peaks, and you're just gonna be yelling like Gordon Cole all the time for the rest of your life.
Nice.
Dr. Josh, today you remind me of a small Mexican chihuahua.
Oh, awesome. All right. Excuse me. So,
All right.
there's several manuscripts of the Apocryphon of Jeremiah C is what it's technically called. And the reason it's called the Apocryphon of Jeremiah C is because there's two other manuscripts from Qumran that also feature Jeremiah, but don't look like they are probably part of the same composition. They might be, but we just don't know. They're too fragmentary. There's no overlaps. Now, Devorah Dumont, the official editor of this text, saw this logical progression through these manuscripts through which she envisioned Jeremiah in a narrative introduction, sitting along the shores of the river Sur in Babylon with the exiles in the 36th year of exile. And they sing a lament, of course, because, it's Jeremiah. And then he starts to teach them the Torah. And then the text moves from there into this historical rehearsal of basically the story of the United Kingdom, and then the sins of the kings and the fall of Israel and the Babylonian exile, all the way into the Hellenistic and the Hasmonean periods and the Antiochian crisis, the Hasmonean war with the Seleucids, and at that point there is an apocalyptic prediction about the future, very similar to the kinds of things that you see in the book of Daniel or the book of Enoch or the book of Jubilees. The Apocryphon of Jeremiah is really similar in a lot of regards to those texts. And then she suggests that there's this hopeful prophecy for the future, bearing in mind that some of these fragments are really tiny. So there's only a few words on each of them. And she's developed this idea about what this text is on that basis. And then there's this large this large fragment right at the very end, which then narrates Jeremiah's life with the people who have left Jerusalem and are living in Egypt. So, and this is the general picture of this text through these manuscripts that's been accepted by scholars for a long time. And this, I was just basically working off of this as I was writing my dissertation, and I was, 3 or 4 years deep at this point and nearing the conclusion, and then I had a major crisis. And I think I don't know. I've talked to a lot of people who've written PhDs, and I think all of us at some point hit a crisis point in our research, and this was it for me. There was an article that was published by Qumran, who is a scholar in Israel at the Hebrew University. I believe. No, maybe it's the University of Haifa. So she published this article called Epochs and End Time, the 490-year scheme in Second Temple literature. It was published in Dead Sea Discoveries in 2006. So it was published actually the year after I started my PhD. I didn't get around to reading it until after another year or two, but when I did read it, it just kind of shattered my world, because what this article suggested very convincingly was that Devorah Dumont and her arrangement of all of these manuscripts, 4Q385A, 4Q387, 4Q388A, 4Q389, and 4Q390 was wrong. And what she argued very persuasively was that that last one, 4Q390, was actually not a copy of this same composition, but that it was actually a separate composition altogether, completely separate and distinct. And I have to say, it was a very convincing article. 4Q390 and the Apocryphon of Jeremiah C, she observed, have different views of the exile. They have a different configuration of the calendar. This epoch of 490 years plays an integral role. There's this idea that from the time of the start of the exile, like from the time of the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, building off of Daniel's prophecy of 490 years in Daniel chapter 9, building off of that, both of these texts have constructed their own calendar with regards to what's going to happen over the course of that period of time. And when you look closely and compare and contrast the two, they have different ways of imagining this schema. She noted that there's a focus in 4Q380 or in the Apocryphon of Jeremiah on sins of idolatry, on cultural accommodation, which would be suitable within a diasporic community. Whereas in 4Q390, there are these fiercely, these fierce anti-priesthood polemics that punctuate the entire text. And importantly, unlike all the other manuscripts of the Apocryphon of Jeremiah C, there are no overlaps between 4Q390 and the rest of them. And as you can imagine, I was 3/4 of the way finished writing my dissertation on the Dead Sea Scrolls at this point, and this was very inconvenient for me. But it turned out to be maybe one of the best things in the long run for me in writing my dissertation, because it pushed me in a new direction. I decided, because I had no other choice, that I had to adopt Verman's view of these manuscripts. But then when I started to look really closely at 4Q390 and compare it and contrast it to 4Q, to the other manuscripts of the Apocryphon of Jeremiah C, I started to see something really interesting, and it got me really excited. Can you pull up some of those pictures from the source criticism section, Vish. Not these ones. Not the pictures of the fragments. I know you're very excited to look at those, and we will. But some of these ones. So in my dissertation, one of the things that I did was I developed this. This is an appendix at the end. I had to take actual physical pictures of it because I don't have the electronic files anymore. They're pretty old. I think I wrote them in Word 2005. But anyways,
Wow.
I actually, so fun fact, my dissertation was not written in Unicode, which means that all the
I'm not
Hebrew
surprised.
I had to write from left to right. So because at the time there was no Unicode support for the Mac version of Word or anything. So I had to write everything from left to right. I had to check so carefully all my Hebrew throughout my entire dissertation, which, by the way, I have a word count here. It's right here at the bottom of
Now you know what it's like being a scribe, huh?
Yeah,
Trying to
right.
make sure you copy every little
78,358 words exclusive of bibliography. So yes, it's a fold-out page. So I developed this chart where what I was seeing was development, and not just in 4Q390, but through the individual manuscripts of the Apocryphon of Jeremiah. This got me very excited. I thought that what I was seeing was scribal activity actually occurring within these individual manuscripts of the Apocryphon. And I've got these 3 columns. I developed 3 historical, an historical view of 3 stages of development that I called T plus 1 and T plus 2. If I remember correctly, the T stood for Taphanes, which is the place where Jeremiah went to go live with the exiles in Egypt. And the T plus 2 layer is 4Q390. And what it does is it clearly knows something, or it has in the background these echoes of the Apocryphon of Jeremiah. And there you can see all 3. There's this textual development occurring between the manuscripts in all 3 of these layers. This was very cool to me. When I literally was up like 16, 17 hours a day just working on sorting out what was happening between these manuscripts for a few weeks. It was like all I did. And I, sent it off to my supervisor, and he really liked it. So I was like, yes, this is very good. So yeah, what I ended up with was this very source critical perspective of textual development in the Apocryphon that I could actually now demonstrate with manuscripts, which I thought was really cool. And interestingly enough, even though the time period is short, like we're only talking about a period of, I think, 70 or 80 years between the individual manuscripts, even though the time period was short, the earliest layer there in T is almost always represented by the earliest manuscript, 4Q388A. And yeah, so I was like, wow, this is very cool. I really like this. So in my mind, this was the most exciting thing of my dissertation, even though most of the information ended up getting shoved into this appendix at the very back on these very large pages. But I rewrote a couple of chapters in here to reflect the research that I did, and yeah, and that was it. Basically, what I ended up effectively demonstrating was, and I have to say this too, the other strong implication of this which I thought was important for the larger picture in the dissertation, was not only does 4Q390 actually not overlap with any of the other copies of the Apocryphon of Jeremiah, 4Q390 also does not mention Jeremiah. Jeremiah is absent from
Gasp.
4Q390. So in my mind, what's happening is you've got these
Oh.
strong traditions coalescing around the prophet that are, you know, regarding these expectations for the last days, regarding the history of the post-exilic period. And then at this last stage, Jeremiah just kind of fades into the background. He kind of disappears. And all that's left are these retellings of this.
I have a question. I know,
Yes.
or at least a comment. So I noticed between T and T1 here, on line 8, you have Abraham and the people of Isaac, and on this one, you have the little insertion that's not here, or at least attested in the T+1.
Yeah.
No, like,
So, yeah.
before he goes to Ecomelech or whatever, and
There's
what? That
Yeah.
is cool, but also what?
Yeah. So, and there's one of the other things that we see when we look at, and I think the other thing that got me excited about tracking the development between what I saw as 3 layers was there's this introduction of these figures, the Malache HaMastamot, the angels of Mastamot. We know them from a couple of other texts at Qumran. Yeah, you got it, cuneiform guy. Women got their revenge eventually.
It's seen me rolling.
I wish.
They
I wish.
hating.
I wish. So,
They're erasing me from the scrolls in the Qumran Yahad.
So the other thing that I saw was these angels of Mastamot appear actually to have been inserted in the T+1 layer, and then are all over the place in the T+2 layer. So I'll just give you kind of a taste of how some of this sounds. So this is just part of it. This is the text in 4Q388A, fragment 7, column 2, which overlaps with 4Q387, fragment 2, column 3, and fragment 3. In those days, a king before the nations will arise, a blasphemer, and he will commit acts of wickedness. And in his day there's a break there. He will probably end or bring to an end Israel from being a people. In his day, I will break the kingdom of Egypt. Then Israel I will break, and I will deliver unto the sword, and I will make the land desolate. I will remove man far away, and I will abandon the land in the hands of the angels of Mastamot, and I will hide my face from Israel. So this section here, I will abandon the land in the hand of the angels of Mastamot, and I will hide my face from Israel. So this is a sign for them on that day. That whole section that I just read there appears in 4Q387, but is missing in the overlapping text in 4Q388A. Devor Dumont suggested that this was a case of haplography, and it could be, but I think, especially if I'm right with regards to the development of what's going on in this text when we get to 4Q390 and the retention of the angels of Mastamot there, I think this is potentially an insertion. This is a gloss by this scribe in 4Q387. I will abandon the land in its desolation, and the priests of Jerusalem will turn to serve other gods. and commit the same abominations as did the Goyim. Then an order of priests will rise up, and then there's 3 who will rule, and it gets really fragmentary here. Something about the Holy of Holies and the altar. Those who declare themselves righteous will fall by the sword. So that's the T and the T+1 layer. This is actually the T+1 layer, where this is basically describing the end of the the kingdom just before the turn of the Hellenistic period. So this is all taking place this is in the Hellenistic period, just before the Hasmonean revolt. And then the 3 who will rule are kind of the last rulers of the Jerusalem temple, the last priests in the Jerusalem temple, before the Hasmoneans take over. Now, 4Q390 is reviewing the same period of time and then using a lot of the same language and the same terminology. It's echoing in the background, right? It's not identical, but you can hear a lot of the flavor of the Apocryphon of Jeremiah C sort of in the background here. So this is 4Q390. Then from the completion of that generation in the 7th Jubilee, after the devastation of the land, they will forget statute, season, Sabbath, and covenant. They will invalidate everything and do what is evil in my eyes. It's a Deuteronomic expression, but it's repeated from the Apocryphon of Jeremiah A. So I will hide my face from them, which is something else that appears in the Apocryphon of Jeremiah. The Apocryphon of Jeremiah C. I will deliver them into the hand of their enemies. I will surrender them to the sword. I will let survive from them fugitives, so they may not be completely destroyed by my wrath. And when my face is hidden from them, then the angels of the Mastamot will rule over them. But I will reject them, and they will return to do that which is evil in my eyes, and will walk in stubbornness of heart. This is also another expression common to Jeremiah, but also now common to the Apocryphon of Jeremiah A. And then he talks about my house and my altar and my sanctuary, and how these things, he mentions then the rule of Belial will be over them, so as to surrender them to the sword for a week. So the relationships are much clearer to see in the Hebrew text, but there's enough of these overlaps, of these parallels, that it convinced the hell out of me that what we're dealing with is this a pretty complex development within these manuscripts. I wrote an article that appears in this volume, celebrating the Dead Sea Scrolls, a Canadian collection, called what was it? This is the first article I wrote after I defended my dissertation, called Torah Performance and History in the Gola. The Gola is the exile. Rewritten Bible and Representational Authority in the Apocryphon of Jeremiah C, where I isolated all the features of overlap and correspondence between the Apocryphon, that T and T+1 layer, and the T+2 layer in 4Q390. So first, by the temporal markers in the day of the Gadaphon and Apocalypse 1, that's the T and T+1 layer, and from the completion of that generation in Apocalypse 2. Second, there's a temporal marker in each, which is preceded by a description of increasing wickedness. Va'asora arava, that they did increasing evil, appears in both texts, compared to the previous generation. Third, each temporal marker indicates an apocal turning point, also reflected in an upward movement. In Apocalypse 1, the Gadaphon will rise up using the verb cum. In Apocalypse 2, the first returnees from exile are those who go up. Number 4, there follows a description of God's abandonment when he hides his face. in both texts and delivers people to the sword. Apocalypse 2 supplements this with a list of cultic offenses, but also with a promise of a remnant. Number 5, both then contain a description of the rule of the angels of Mastamot. Number 6, next follows a turning using the verb shuv and a performance of wickedness. In Apocalypse 1, the priests of Jerusalem are said to commit abominations. Ul osot, kitavot. Sorry, this is all unpointed stuff. In Apocalypse 2, an unspecified group of people are predicted to do evil in the eyes of God. Number 7, this is immediately followed by a fragmentary mention of cult objects or sacred spaces. In Apocalypse 1, it's the altar. In Apocalypse 2, it's the house and the Holy of Holies. Number 8, each contain fragmentary reference to those who fall by the sword. And number 9, finally, the period at the end is described in both texts as one of internal struggle in which each man will contend with his friend, as in 4Q387, or they will quarrel amongst themselves in 4Q390. So it's in my opinion, it was the coolest thing that I did in my dissertation. But I am happy flapping in between chat messages.
Textual layers.
Nice. That's good. So that was basically it. When I had this gestalt moment, it basically mapped everything else out for me in the rest of the dissertation, and I finished it, and I defended it, and I passed with minor revisions. I had to, because I was typing all my Hebrew from left to right, as you can imagine.
Left to right, you mean right to left?
Sorry, right to left. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I've had a few of these. And I was also manually typing in all the accents and the breathing marks for the Greek text. So as you can imagine, I had many corrections. Maybe not many. I managed to finish them in a day, but I had a day's worth of corrections in my dissertation, which amounted to I think it was entirely just typos, which I felt pretty good. So, okay, so the minor revisions were anything but. Yeah, but when you see the mistakes, they're easy enough to correct. I got to tell you, the breathing marks and the accents were the worst, but it's that's awesome. Thank you, Prixie Solus Dyslexic Purple. So yeah, I passed, and I graduated, and then I started to think about publication. And one of the first things I did after I completed my dissertation was I gave a presentation of my work at the annual meeting of the Canadian Society of Biblical Studies, which was meeting in Ottawa in what year was that? That was 2009. It was meeting in Ottawa. So actually, do you want to show, Vish, maybe just the contents page? So this is the finished product here of the dissertation. Oh, it's very small, isn't it? There we go. So you can see here, there's 7 chapters. The first 2 chapters were basically my history of scholarship and my problematization of the question of rewritten Bible.
You all right?
I'm okay. I'll be fine.
Okay.
And then I have like 3 chapters all about the Apocryphon of Jeremiah C. I talk about the history of scholarship there. I talk about the manuscripts, and then some of my synopsis for it. And then I dive into a lot of the Second Temple stuff. Jeremiah, Qumran, perceptions of Jeremiah and Second Temple Judaism. So, and then I ended up on this question of authority. What do we do now with this figure Jeremiah, and how do we understand him as he's being handled by writers in the Second Temple period. I came up with this with seeing 4 features. Jeremiah as a cultural object. He appears, actually, I'm going to read this. Mostly because I might be too tipsy to do it otherwise. I have a page number
Okay.
here. Where is it? I thought I had a page number. Should be marked as dissertation. There it is, page 191. Okay. So
Page
here.
191.
No, you don't have that. I've got that.
Wait, are you sure?
Yeah. I didn't give you that
Okay.
one. So it's here. It's here in the big book. So I said this, that while Jeremiah's persona has received special emphasis, 4 different trajectories emerge and will be discussed in greater detail below. The first features his prophetic authority, appearing in those texts that capitalize on his prophetic call or the veracity of his predictions. The second is called his Mosaic authority, distinguished by Jeremiah's function as a Torah instructor and a national leader in line with Moses. The third features Jeremiah as a member of the Levitical class of singers and his reputation for lament. This has been labeled his liturgical authority. And finally, Jeremiah's temple authority is used to describe those texts in which he is remembered for his cultic sympathies and his efforts to preserve specific elements of the temple institution. In those texts which seem to draw authority from Jeremiah's words, apart from his character, 2 features are discussed in particular. First, in the Baruch traditions, Jeremiah's prophetic office is seen as continuous and forms a sort of authority used by writers to legitimate their own messages and institutions. Second, in a variety of selections from apocalyptic and wisdom texts, Jeremiah's oracles have become reconstrued for halakhic purposes or legal purposes or part of a new prophecy. So that's kind of where I ended up on this question of what the writers in early Judaism were doing with the figure Jeremiah. And I thought it came out pretty good. I went and I presented at the Canadian Society of Biblical Studies in 2009 in Ottawa, Ontario, and Hindi Nyman was leading the section. She is now at Oxford. She is in John Barton's chair at Oxford. But Hindi Nyman was a fan of my work, and she, yeah, I'm Canadian. Wow, you must be new here, Gamer Time. I am Canadian. Thank you, Chrissy H,
Happy
for the
birthday,
birthday
Kipp.
wishes.
Chrissy!
So she told me she was also the editor of the Supplements for the Study of Judaism. Sorry, Supplements for the Study of the Pseudepigrapha. That's right, by Brill. And she told me she wanted my dissertation for her series. And I was like, that's awesome. So I went to another conference a couple months later, and I met for the first time Eibert Ticheler, who at the time was the editor of the Studies on the Text of the Desert of Judah, which is also published by Brill, and is the premier series of work in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I was sitting with him at dinner one night, and the first question he asked me is, why are you not publishing your dissertation in STDJ? I know it sounds like STDs, which is bad, but it's not. It's STDJ. Relax, everyone. So, and I told him, I says, well, I've got this offer from Journal for the Study of the Pseudepigrapha. And he's like, look, every good Dead Sea Scrolls scholar is going to publish their stuff in Studies of the Text of the Desert of Judah. So he said, send me your dissertation. I want to look at it. So I did. And I was expecting him to be very impressed. And he was not as impressed as I was expecting him to be. When I got the notice back from him, he said, yeah, I think maybe we could use like 2 chapters from your dissertation in the series, but I don't know about
Heck
a
yeah.
lot of the other stuff, right? He's like,
Heck yeah.
so what did I was at this point, I was kind of sold on the idea of being a Dead Sea Scrolls scholar who has published his dissertation as a monograph in the premier series of Dead Sea Scrolls scholarship. So I basically rewrote my dissertation for publication. So if you actually, you've got the link. Maybe I'll just pull it up. I'll show you here because I've got the link
Yeah,
to
I've
the
got
book
it
here.
up.
Oh, do you have it up? Go to the table. Just go to the table of contents for the book, right?
Okay, let me pull this
And I'll
in
show
real
you.
quick.
So I basically pulled all the early Judaism stuff out of this, and I just focused on the Dead Sea Scrolls. And by the way, this was my first publication under my name, Kipp Davis, as opposed to my terrible legal name. So it's now 5 chapters. So chapter 1 is my history of scholarship and my problematization, but all focused on just the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? And then chapter 2 is all about the Apocryphon of Jeremiah. And then chapter 3, I think, is my edition of the Apocryphon of Jeremiah, where I've basically gone through and as I worked on the book too, I did some more work on just figuring out what's going on with the fragments, and the ways in which the individual manuscripts are interacting with each other. And then I did a whole separate chapter on 4Q390. And then in the final chapter, I think, and this is where I put all the information about the table that I made. And then in the final chapter, I did some more work on Jeremiah beyond the Apocryphon. Oh wow, what is this? Sorry. I talked about his presentation in the Apocryphon, and then I talked about mentions of him in the Damascus document in 4Q Catena A and 4Q Catena B. They don't mention Jeremiah, but they feature texts from the book of Jeremiah, kind of echoes of various texts. The Hodayot is an important text because in the so-called teacher hymns, there's a series of hymns in the Hodayot, which scholars have suggested were actually written by the teacher of righteousness. They're written in the first person. They're his own self-descriptions of his internal pain and his terrible situation as, the leader, as a holy figure, basically, as a prophet. Now, importantly, a lot of the language from the teacher hymns is drawn straight out of the book of Jeremiah. It doesn't ever actually quote Jeremiah, but much of the ways in which he describes himself is very reminiscent of the confessions of Jeremiah. So, and then there's one more text, 4Q470, which mentions Jeremiah. So it's almost a completely different thing. It's totally revised. It bears a passing resemblance to my actual dissertation, but something else important happened while I was working on the book. And at this point, we'll look at those last couple of pictures that I gave you. So I was working on the book through 2012, 2013. I was already in Norway on my postdoc, still working on the book, when something earth-shattering happened in 2013, and that was the launch of the Leon Levy Dead Sea Scrolls Library, which is the digital database of all the photographs of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And it's not just the old photographs. They took new photographs of all the Dead Sea Scrolls. And in particular, they took, I'll show this one. We've seen this one already, but this one was devastating to me. First of all, can you all see that? Yeah. So I'll zoom in on this a bit here. We'll go full screen and we'll zoom in a bit. So the problem was these three fragments here. Whoops. Oh, God damn it. What am I doing? My trackpad's doing funny things. Okay. There we go. I'm just going to leave it alone. These ones that are marked like 6, 8, and 9, those aren't the actual numbers. The Leon Levy library does funny things with them. Unfortunately, they're upside down. But that doesn't matter. When the first time I saw this picture, my heart sank. And the reason for that is because the fragment on the bottom left is fragment 1, and the two fragments above it are fragment 18. And in the synopsis that I developed of this manuscript, which was based on what Devorah Dumont had done before me, fragment 1 was the start of the manuscript, or closest to the start of the manuscript, and fragment 18 was closest to the end of the manuscript. And as soon as I saw this picture, I started looking at these fragments and going, oh my God, I think these belong together. And it completely flipped the way in which I was envisioning this manuscript. Here, I'll show you something else. If you can pull up the book again, Vish, and go to am I boring anyone, by the way? I don't care. It's my birthday. You can suffer.
That's right.
That's right. Okay. So
almost 90 people are here. They want to listen to you talk about your dissertation. This is awesome. Fascinating.
It's really this is really kind of cool. So so if you go to page 90 in the book, and there's some pictures there too. If you could put that on the
all right, let me
on the screen.
Get
but this
correct page.
I think at this point I kind of started to think I have to rethink just the entire way that I've been imagining this text and what it is. I have to with this physical information in view. So this is, yeah. So
okay.
Let's scroll back to page 90 for a second, because I think there's a picture.
There was one on page 92.
Yeah, go to page 92.
Or 3, or whatever. There was one in this area, and I scrolled past it when I was looking for the right one.
Oh, so there's that one. That's not actually the one. I'll give you the
97.
right page number. I'll give you the right page number. It's actually page 82 is the picture that I want to look at right now. Sorry, everyone. I'm very good at this. 82. All right. So
okay,
this one here. Look at this picture. So this is fragment 18, column 2 on the top, and then on the bottom is fragment 1. Now, if you zoom so you can see both together, zoom out so you can see both together, Vish, because we're really, what we're doing is we're looking at the shape of these, and I hope everyone can see what I'm seeing when I look at this. All I see is this sharp horizontal line, and then like an almost 90-degree break, and then another almost 90-degree break on both of these fragments. That looks very similar. And they're very close in size and shape. And these are old photographs, so they don't include everything that editors have added to the fragments. And there's, in their final arrangement, they look very similar. And as soon as I saw this, I was like, I think these fragments belong together. And basically what that means is that it's no longer fragment 1 through fragment 18. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all the way up to fragment 18. What that means is that fragment 1 now belongs on the left side of fragment 18. So we now have to shift everything basically from fragment 1 to, I think, fragment 6. I shifted and I moved it to the other side. So now that beginning part is on the end of this manuscript. I was fairly tentative about this in the book just because I was nervous about it. That's the other exciting thing too. You'll notice, Vish, on fragment 1, that it's like the beginning of a column. You can see that the text.
Like right.
But if you
right
go
here.
to there you go. But if you look to the right, excuse me, you can actually see some writing over there belonging to the previous column. And I'm like, if I'm right, this belongs to the same column as fragment 18.2. And I can see an ion there. And if I stick it in line with what's there on fragment 18.2, I can produce a better reconstruction of text than what Devorah Dumont did. And that convinced me. I was like, I can reconstruct this. And as a result, it completely messed up the way that I was viewing this text, where it was no longer this, this historical apocalypse with a narrative introduction and a narrative conclusion. Now, this manuscript actually kind of looks more like a collection of oracles and prophecies with some narrative bits intermixed in it that's somewhat reminiscent of the way that the book of Jeremiah ends. So in place of the oracles of the nations, you've got prophecies that appear, which are then followed by this historical account of Jeremiah among the exiles. And then, Jeremiah, he's sending a letter to the exiles. And then Jeremiah living with the people in Tahpanhes in Egypt. And then after that, he breaks into this apocalyptic prophecy about the Hasmonean period and the end times. And where I ended up in the book, I suggested that, excuse me, this looks kind of similar in structure to the relationship between Septuagint Jeremiah and Apocryphal Baruch. And we know with some relative confidence that Jeremiah and Baruch were collected together for a long period of time. So in my mind, the Apocryphon of Jeremiah C, the Apocryphon of Jeremiah, is kind of like a competing version of this part of the text. Now, there's one more thing I want to show here, and that is those pictures that you pulled up. At the same time,
all the little.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
G.
Okay.
G Thevenin, can we talk about this for just a second?
This?
The problem with critical scholarship, you're always changing your mind. So how can we trust you? It's true. So one of the things that Ibert Tickler taught me to do is called an archaeology of photographs. So when it comes to the Dead Sea Scrolls, we have literally hundreds and hundreds of photographs that have been in circulation since the 1950s. And they're all cataloged and numbered. And one of the things that I was taught by Albert Tickler was to start paying close attention to the way the fragments looked in the earliest photographs and comparing those in sequence, tracking them in the history of their photography. So here, and this is part of how I arrived at the conclusions that I did with regards to this manuscript, was doing this archaeology of photographs. I wanted to show this just to give people a sense of what this looks like. I've highlighted what looks like a fragment up at the top here. This is actually not a single fragment. This is a wad. So there's 5 fragments in this bunch here that you see. And this is fragments 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes. 1, 2. Yes. It's fragments 3 through 8. That's actually 6. No, 3 through 7. Sorry, that's 5 fragments. So now if you go to the next picture, because what happened was, so this, sorry, Vish, just go back for a second to that last picture, because I want to show people. So what this is the first picture that was snapped of these particular fragments after they had been cleaned, and when scholars were starting to organize them. And as you'll notice, they're all kind of just put on the plate wherever there's space. We're going to put a fragment and we're going to take a picture. Doesn't matter if the writing is right side up or upside down. Sometimes it doesn't even matter if there's Hebrew fragments and Greek fragments on the same photograph. So that's the first photograph of this particular fragment wad. Now, on the second photograph, the wad has been separated, and you can see each individual fragment now that was in that wad. And you'll notice the labels on them, starting at the bottom. This says top, then 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's fragments 1 through 5. And because they were in a wad, that means that they were in a scroll together in order. So we can actually put these fragments in a sequence starting from right to left in terms of their order in this manuscript. It's very cool. Let's go to the next one. This is just tracking the way. So John Strugnell is the scholar who did the original work on this. This is the earliest picture that was taken of fragments 17 and 18. 17 and 15. That's right. You can see them. I've highlighted them at the top hill. You'll notice the very similar shape between them is an indicator to us as scroll scholars that these fragments were part of a wad, that they belong together. They deteriorated together, which is why they're the same shape. If you go to the next picture.
A little sneaky Greek.
Some sneaky Greek in there, right? So this is part of fragment 17 and part of fragment 16, the first photograph of them. And again, somewhat similar in shape, not identical, but somewhat similar in shape and size, suggests that they belong together in layers.
But also what I was going to say earlier when you were having some tech issues is that look at the scale. 4 centimeters. This little thing that we're looking at is maybe 2 centimeters across. That writing is itty bitty teeny tiny. It's really very small.
All right, here, these are the same fragments now on the top. If you could look at the 2 fragments on the top here, that's fragment 15 and fragment 17. But now the editors have found some matching pieces that belong to both of them, and they've added to them. And the big fragment on the bottom is fragment 18. This is the one that I am convinced was next to fragment 1. Okay? And the fact that all of these appear together on the same photograph indicates that they probably belong together in the same grouping that was brought to the museum. Next one. It is the coolest puzzle ever. Here we go. Struggles
These
thoughts are
vaguely
continuing.
Brazil-shaped.
The Brazil-shaped fragments. His thoughts are continuing to develop. He's starting to, and you'll notice now. Look what's below these, Vish. These 5 fragments below. These are the ones from the wad that we looked at earlier. Fragments 3 through 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the one there on the bottom right is fragment 2. So it's very cool. And then I think there's one more. Yeah, this is the final arrangement. On the top there, you have fragment 17. And then on the bottom, you have fragment 15 and 16. And the way they're arranged, you can see that the shapes between fragment 15 and part of fragment 17 match. And then fragment 16 and the rest of fragment 17 also look quite similar.
Oh, what happened there?
Yeah.
There we go. Okay.
You see that? So one of the fun things about working on Dead Sea Scrolls is playing with shapes. If you like puzzles, if you like putting pieces together, if you like that kind of thing, then scrolls are for you guys. All right. So
puzzles. So
that
much.
is the story of my dissertation. It took me forever to tell it. The results, it turned out good. The book was published in 2014. The reviews were good, and there've been some people who've said some nice things about me since
as they should. This is really cool.
So, what is the takeaway from this, Vish? I'm trying to think. I'm trying to decide.
I mean, the takeaway is puzzles are cool. And if your puzzle is also a hyperfixation in a niche topic, even better. And if it's historical, filling in gaps we didn't know, that's even cooler than that.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Some of the other takeaways, I think, are that takes a long time to write a PhD.
Yeah.
It's hard to publish them. It's super stressful, and it will fuck with your life when you're doing it, because you're discovering you're like I said, everyone's having a crisis moment or a couple of crisis moments, and they are super stressful. But what is it they say? Crisis is opportunity. I think that's the saying, isn't it?
Necessity is the mother of invention.
Necessity is the mother of invention. That's a good one too.
Not
Wow.
as good as some of my late father's aphorisms. I'd consent for $10.
My
Hope you're
gosh.
having a biblical birthday. Thanks for the stream party hat emoji.
Cheers, Maya. It was your idea.
Yeah.
So thank you. I think it was a good one. All
Yeah,
right.
the chat's like really excited about this. Seriously. Triceratops says your thesis will change a million times, but it's worth it.
It absolutely is. And it's something, I know I said that I hadn't cracked the spine in, since before COVID, but once you, and as I've been thinking about it again here for the last week, it's your first big project. It's kind of your first child that you bring into the world. There's a special relationship that you always have with your PhD dissertation and your research, to the point that there's stuff that you just never really get over. Like, one of the things that I never got around to solving was, well, people might have noticed that a couple of those manuscripts for the Apocryphon of Jeremiah have the letter A, 4Q385, A, 4Q388, A. That's because the original editor, Devorah Dumont, had a larger collection of fragments that she was originally working with, dealing with both Jeremiah and Ezekiel. And she made the decision through working through this material. And I think she's right about this. She made the decision through working through this material that these were actually separate compositions. One composition dealing with Ezekiel, another composition dealing with Jeremiah. But then she also decided to separate the manuscripts. And I'm like, why? Like, that's sort of where I ended up when I finished my PhD research, when I published the book. It was one of the things I was going to look into next was, what is the material relationship? What is the physical relationship, especially between these two groups? 4Q388, which is a pseudo-Ezekiel text. That's what it's called, pseudo-Ezekiel. And 4Q388a, which is the Apocryphon of Jeremiah, and 4Q385, which is a pseudo-Ezekiel manuscript, and 4Q385a, which is a manuscript of the Apocryphon of Jeremiah. See, I think that this is a case where there are multiple compositions, or maybe they're parts of the same composition on the same manuscript. And this is a question with regards to this particular text, these particular texts, that has not been explored since before I published. So, but then all of a sudden people were forging Dead Sea Scrolls and I ended up doing other things. So
yeah, to catch
there
up.
we go. I got to get back to it.
All right. Keep for $4.99. Takeaway for me is inspiration of a passion for finding the best fit and not defending a dogma. Yep.
Don't defend the dogmas, people. What's the dogma in this case? I mean, I think there's probably a few, right? There's the scripture dogma.
The text never changed. There's no variations.
There's no variation. I think in my own sort of niche world, there's this is a dogma. Okay, this is one that I feel strongly about, and started to challenge in my dissertation work and continue to want to challenge today, is within Qumran studies, the prioritization of arranging texts, arranging the fragments within individual manuscripts on the basis of their literary, what's the word I'm looking for? Their literary cohesion, our expectations for what an individual text said, as opposed to the physical evidence that we have. Because this is a real problem. This is something that I encountered with the Apocryphon of Jeremiah texts and manuscripts, right? Like this decision to separate all the Ezekiel stuff from the Jeremiah stuff. Why are we doing that? What happens when we put it all back together? And think about it from a, just on the basis of the physical remains. Let's look at the fragments. Let's compare them to one another. Let's check the scribal features on these individual fragments. What is going on here? When it came to the arrangement of the material, what Dumont did, she had wads of fragments to work with, and that's an empirical way of determining the order of your manuscripts. But she also was looking at, well, there's past tense verbs used here, so this belongs at the beginning. And there's future tense verbs used here, so this belongs at the end, right? She's taking a literary approach to reconstructing the manuscripts. And I think that's a mistake. I think that's an important second step, but the very first thing we should be doing is looking at what we have physically, the material. Let's focus on the material and put the pieces of the puzzle together first before dealing with the text. Westhoff knew what he was doing with the word for word.
He knew that he was going to make a perfect clip for all the Christians to post and share everywhere, even though it's a lie. They still defend it. Yeah, I mean, is Westhoff enough in the weeds on the Dead Sea Scrolls to know,
Not at all, right?
Anything that you would have presented tonight?
No, he doesn't know any of this stuff. This is very, very niche stuff, people. I think there've been a total of like 160 copies of my book that have ever been purchased. So it's, this is not Joe Rogan's Dead Sea Scrolls. This is what scholars are doing.
Yeah. There's a meme from Dapper's channel about young Earth creationists, and it's a little triangle, and you have 3 options, and it says, pick 2. Honest, well-informed, creationist. So we can just remake that to apologists. Like, pick 1. Honest, well-informed, apologist. Pick 2.
Pick 2. All right. Well, this was fun. Thank you for letting me prattle on for hours about stuff I did, a decade ago. And yeah. Thanks for coming out, everyone.
Well, as Mr. Spock says, fascinating.
Sweet. That's what we aim to do here. All right. If you have any more questions, get them in quick because we're going to shut it down here in a few minutes. I should watch
more.
What's Evangelion? Do you know what Andrew's talking about?
Neon Genesis Evangelion. It is an anime that leans really hard into like Enochian and apocalyptic battles and things, and it is very well known for its quote biblically accurate angels.
Oh, excellent. Are they actually?
Yeah.
Oh, really? That's so cool.
Watch and find out
about it. Yeah. What's it called?
It's very popular.
Even Neon in Canada.
Holy Evangelion.
Crap. Evangelion.
Or Evangelion.
I gotta look
you
that
actually
up.
know how to say it. Greek.
So Hatikva Triceratops.
Andrew, it's based on the Dead Sea Scrolls. Yeah, good.
Oh dear.
Good, what you did there.
Oh, I do think. Okay, I have seen this. All right, yeah, I'll have to check that out. Thanks for the recommendation.
Oh.
So, all right. So what's happening? As we close up shop here, Vish, you and I are returning to Dapper Dinosaur's channel. Well, I am returning to Dapper Dinosaur's channel.
I never left. I don't
never
have
left.
to return.
You don't have to return. I was saving democracy, but it's in good shape for the time being. So they released me, and I will.
You've done your duty.
I did it. I did. So, by the way, I had to call an ambulance on Friday night because a poor old lady tripped on the curb and smashed her face.
Oh no!
Broke her nose, a couple of teeth. It was terrifying. There's like a pool of blood on the ground. The paramedics were phenomenal. Thank you, Chilliwack paramedics. You were great. So, but yes,
hey,
it was.
What's it like to not hesitate before calling an ambulance?
Oh, I actually did hesitate for a minute. Like I asked her,
due to cost.
Is it okay if I call the ambulance? It just seemed kind of like the right thing to do, right? So, but and she, she said yes. So I called, and that was it. But it
Canada's
it,
literally so
Jesus.
nice. You have to
Pat,
ask somebody.
Can you
calling the
believe?
EMTs like what?
Can you believe that Pat Lowinger is trying to call me right now? What are you doing, Pat? I'm
Right
streaming.
now, he knows you're
Right
still on
now.
air.
He knows I'm on the air. What are you doing, dude? So, but yeah, it and the ambulance arrived inside of 10 minutes, which is pretty good. So I was very impressed. But yeah. So but we'll be back on Saturday on Dapper's channel. We're not talking about Bodhi's
Thank
terrible book.
goodness.
We're actually talking about food, which is pretty great.
Food. We get
So,
on so many tangents about food. We just decided to take donations in honor of a food stream. So
food stream.
show up hungry.
Yes.
Or don't. I'm not your mom. Hang fishy for 5. How could, or I guess can,
Oh, yeah.
AI sort of help sort these fragments? Also, Behistun was
Ooh.
that once in color.
That's a good question. And I don't know the answer to that question. For people who don't know, the Behistun Inscription is maybe one of the most remarkable inscriptions on the planet. It's in Iran. What's the name of the place? In Qumran or province, I think, something like that. It's in central Iran. This is an inscription that was commissioned and erected by Darius I. It is written in 3 languages: Akkadian, Farsi, and Elamite. If I got that
Awesome.
right. Yes. And it tells the story of his amazing rise to power and all, the interlopers and enemies that he had to defeat and kill in order to gain control of the Persian imperial throne. The inscription itself measures about, I'll do this in American for y'all because that's where most of you are from.
Thanks.
It's about 100 feet by 25 feet. So it's 100 feet long. It's about 25
Whoa.
feet high. It's on a mountain side, suspended on a cliff.
I know what this. I've seen that.
About 40 feet
Yeah,
off
that's
the
right.
ground. It's amazing. It's just
Hang on.
amazing.
Let me.
And it's got
Where is that?
pictures of Darius and some poor people that he's like stepping on someone's head, and there you go. There it is. The Behistun Inscription, everyone. So the story, the importance of this text, the story behind the Behistun Inscription is that people knew, of course, everyone knew it was there forever. I mean, how could you not? It's there. An army officer in the 1850s, I think, by the name of Henry Rawlinson, dabbled in some Akkadian. He did. Not Akkadian, sorry. He dabbled in some Farsi. That's right. And when he was on a survey for the British Army of Iran, he got some help from the locals and strung together some rickety wooden ladders and went up there and took squeezes of the entire inscription. And then they took it back to the British Library, and he sat down with a few other scholars, and they cracked the code, because at this point in time, Vishanti, prior to when Rawlinson did this, nobody could read Akkadian. Nobody.
So this is like the Rosetta Stone for Akkadian.
Yes, it is.
Awesome.
So they sat down.
That is so
and
cool.
They cracked the code for Akkadian, and ta-da! seriology was born. Thank you
Neat.
to Henry Rawlinson and the Behistun Inscription. It's interesting to me, like its placement there. We're told that Darius had multiple copies of it made and distributed throughout the empire, like smaller version, not the big one, but the tablets made and shipped off all over the empire. But I often like to imagine what this was like. This was strategically positioned at a major intersection of traffic traveling east to west from I'm going to get this wrong. I'm not even going to bother. I'll just say east to west and north to south. So it's at this important intersection. You can see it from miles away.
Billboard.
Most people probably can't read it, which is kind of interesting to me. And actually, the inscription is addressed to the gods. It's probably part of why.
So it's not for the people anyway.
It's not for the people, guys. It's for the gods. It's probably why I put it up there so high in the first place.
That's why I wrote it so big.
Because
they would look at a normal inscription and be like, "What is this? An inscription for ants?" Yeah. Yeah.
That's the best, Fish. You win the internet tonight.
Yay, one internet.
All right. So
it's so funny. They're talking about like, how would you mass ship like 20-foot by 100-foot, inscriptions throughout the empire? It's like, obviously that's what the Anunnaki are for. They use their sonic anti-gravity technology to move it.
That's what they do. By the way, it's possible that the Behistun Inscription is mentioned in the Book of Job. I think I talked about that in the stream that I did with you.
What?
Yeah, it's possible. At one point in the Book of Job,
Chapter
he talks
verse.
about.
Let's go. What are you talking? What?
Oh God, listen. Go back and watch the stream. It's the Behemoth stream that I did with you and Dapper Dinosaur. Look, I've had.
That is a very small piece of information that I definitely would not have retained.
Too much beer. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's like your second glass on air. What are you talking about?
I don't know. I'm 52 years old. It's not.
Oh God, no! He's pulling the ace now.
Leave me alone. But there's a
senior abuse.
There's a place where Job talks about. If I get this, I'll try and get this right. There's a place where Job talks about bringing a dispute before Yahweh, and he says something to the effect of, shall I write this with an iron stylus on the cliffs or on the stone? Right? It's something that scholars have pointed to and said, we miss you.
This is the birthday episode. This is the bonus unreleased content for Deep Drinks. Yeah.
That's right.
It's like a bottle episode crossover or something.
It totally is. So, yes. Anyways, we're going to be on Dapper's channel, both Vish and I, on Saturday. It's Wednesday, right? So tomorrow is Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing a Hebrew reading stream tomorrow night, Dr. Josh and I, and we are going to be starting. I have to look it up. He sent me what he wants to do. Psalm 104. We're going to start reading. That'll be fun, right? So, Hebrew students, if you're still out there, make sure you show up tomorrow evening, 5:00 Pacific, 8:00 Eastern. We're reading for an hour in
poetic biblical Hebrew. Whee!
It's probably an easier one. So,
okay. I know. I'm in poetic Hebrew hell right now. I'm trying to translate. So
yeah. So, and then next week is the most exciting week that Vish is going to have in some time. What's happening next week, Vish? You tell the people.
Dr. Justin Sledge of the channel Esoterica will be joining us next week.
2 hours. We've got him for 2 hours, guys.
2 hours.
He
If you
will
bring
be
questions, bring the good ones.
answering audience questions on whatever you want. Next week is Esoterica week. So,
As the whole week, yes.
but it's just one day, and we've crammed it into 2 hours. So yes,
That's right.
come, bring your questions, and it's going to be a good time. I'm very excited about it. So I think that's everything.
Y'all can ask him about his work. You can ask him about the eras of magic that he studies. You could ask him what his favorite skateboard is. You could ask him about growing up in Mississippi. He and I are fellow Southerners. Whoop.
Chrissy's got
Aliens
the
and
right.
Please don't destroy his psyche, please. We want to like invite other people to come over. So
we do want to invite other people to come over. So I know it's quite late for a lot of you guys. It's getting on for me too. I haven't eaten yet, and I have plans to go out for ice cream with my family. So we're going to the local shop where they make their own, which is pretty great, and homemade waffle cones. So we're heading there here in a few minutes. So I better get off. But once again, thank you everyone for coming out. Thank you for your kind birthday wishes. And I hope y'all found this enjoyable. I hope you found it interesting. And I hope that everyone comes back. And I'm just finding the right outro here. Just bear with me. Oh, I put them all down here. There we go. All right. So on behalf of me, on behalf of Vishanti, on behalf of everyone, which is just the two of us here at my channel, I just like to say Hatikva.